Hi class, my name is Jessica and I'm here to talk about my question up for debate, which is, should we ban the use of medically important antibiotics on healthy livestock? So I'm going to start off with some background information, and I figured I'd start with the history. Antibiotics have been used in agriculture since the 1950s, initially to promote growth in livestock and prevent disease. This is critical because animals are natural reservoirs for disease. About 60% of human infections, like salmonella, are zoonotic, meaning they can transfer from animals to humans. While antibiotics were used to enhance growth, the FDA banned this practice in 2017. However, farmers aren't required to report their antibiotic use, which raises concerns about oversight. Um, Here's a graph from Our World in Data showing antibiotic use by livestock type. It highlights that sheep are often raised for wool um, over a longer lifespan and require more antibiotics compared to animals like poultry or cattle, which are typically just raised for their meat. So that's why you're just seeing more here, which I just thought this was just a little interesting tidbit. While antibiotics started being used, antibiotic resistance also started rising, and now it is a global concern. According to the World Health Organization, antibiotic resistant infections cause 1.27 million deaths globally in 2019 alone, a number that is rising every year. Shockingly, up to 80% of our antibiotics in the US are used in the animal sector, often on healthy livestock to promote growth. The The overuse allows antibiotics to enter the environment, spreading resistance among other bacteria. This image illustrates the cycle. Antibiotics are administered to animals, then they interact with bacteria in the soil or in the animal's gut, and then they get pooped out and go into the environment. And they can also contaminate our water and our food supply as well. And so it just has this forever little cycle going on. Bacteria have several clever ways to resist antibiotics, and this image highlights some of the key mechanisms. Antibiotics often target specific bacterial processes like cell wall synthesis or metabolic pathways. But bacteria can adapt by using alternative pathways, inactivating the antibiotic itself, or even developing a efflux pump, which is a mechanism that actively pumps out the antibiotic. Another effective strategy is altering their cell membrane to become impermeable, preventing the antibiotic from even entering the cell in the first place. These adaptations make treating infections increasingly difficult. So, how do bacteria acquire these resistant genes? There are three main ways, and they're surprisingly efficient. First, there's transformation, where bacteria can take up DNA fragments from the environment, say from a dead bacterium nearby, and incorporate it into their own genome. This DNA doesn't have to come from a live bacteria or even the same species. It could just be DNA floating around in the environment. Second, there's transduction, where a bacteriophage, a virus that infects bacteria, transfers resistant genes from one bacterium to another. Finally, there's conjugation. often called bacteria sex, where bacteria directly transfer genes via a plasmid, a small circular piece of DNA. In conjugation, immobile genetic elements called transposons jump onto the plasmid, carrying resistant genes with them. This mechanism allows resistant genes to spread rapidly across bacterial populations, even between different species, which is why antibiotic use in agriculture is so concerning. It creates a perfect environment for resistant genes to proliferate, potentially jumping from livestock bacteria to human pathogens, making infections even harder to treat. One key reason to ban medically important antibiotics in healthy livestock is the spread of antibiotic resistance through agriculture. Frequent or low-dose exposure of antibiotics allows bacteria to adapt and develop resistance. This resistant bacteria like Salmonella or Campylobacter from the table shown here can contaminate food, infect humans, and spread further. This table lists 8 pathogens linked to food production. I am just showing the top 4 included on the paper, but including this ban from this practice could significantly reduce the spread of these dangerous bacteria. Another concern is the environmental impact of antibiotics. Between 40 to 90% of antibiotics given to livestock are excreted unchanged, depending on the drug class, leading to residues in manure that contaminate agricultural ecosystems. These residues persist in the environment longer than they can degrade, creating a cycle of contamination. This can stress out plants, delaying germination and reducing crop yields. While the FDA monitors antibiotic residues in meat and their standards may not be catching everything, it still raises questions about the true extent of environmental, food, and chain contamination. Finally, antibiotic residues in animal products pose a direct risk to the public health. Low-dose exposure can disrupt human microbiome, trigger allergic reactions, and contribute to chronic issues like asthma and obesity. Some studies have even shown even more concerning residues can facilitate and transfer resistant bacteria, such as livestock-associated methicillin-resistant Staph aureus into the food chain. This increases infection risks, and banning medically important antibiotics in healthy livestock would help minimize these health threats. So, on the other hand, there are some compelling reasons to continue using antibiotics in livestock. The American Veterinary Medical Association warns that restricting antibiotics could lead to untreated infections, causing animal suffering and higher mortality rates. Livestock are vulnerable to bacteria infections like Salmonella and E. coli, which can also spread to humans through contaminated food or water, as discussed. But antibiotics are essential for preventing these outbreaks, protecting animal welfare, and ensuring their food safety. Without them, farmers could face significant economic losses and threaten food security. Another concern is the economic impact on food prices. If we ban antibiotics for disease prevention in healthy livestock, production costs are predicted to rise due to increased disease rates and slower animal growth. Some studies estimate this could reduce meat production by 10 to 15%, forcing farmers to charge higher prices. This price increase would likely hit low-income consumers the hardest, making affordable protein less accessible. And this study here that I'm showing, this graph, was done in 2015, and it's just showing the estimated price increase and meat quantity drop. Finally, there's not enough evidence to justify a complete ban. Researchers have set a threshold of 50 milligrams of antibiotics per population corrected unit to measure the safe usage levels. On this graph, the tan indicates safe levels, while the red indicates overuse. And you can see that the US falls within the recommended range. While agriculture can contribute to resistance through environmental contamination, or there is evidence, some small evidence, that agriculture can contribute to resistance through environmental contamination or through direct infection, it's only a small fraction of the overall resistance burden. Cross-species transmission and gene transfer to human pathogens are possible but very difficult to trace, and this suggests that we do need more research before implementing a ban. We need more harder evidence of this being an issue. In conclusion, the debate over banning medically important antibiotics in healthy livestock is complex, with valid arguments on both sides. On one hand, this practice contributes to antibiotic resistance, environmental contamination, and public health risks. As we've seen the spread of resistance, bacteria, and the persistence of residues in our ecosystems. On the other hand, antibiotics are crucial for preventing disease in livestock, supporting animal welfare, and keeping food prices affordable for consumers. So, what's the solution? I believe we just need to find the right balance. So, here are a few solutions that I came up with. So, requiring farmers to report antibiotic usage would increase transparency and allow scientists to really track the antibiotic residues in meat, soil, and in dairy products. We also need to do more research. Especially to better understand the link between agriculture use and human resistance. So finally, promoting alternatives like improved farm hygiene, using more vaccines or creating more vaccines. That goes into more research, and using more probiotics. These three things can help reduce the need for antibiotics while maintaining productivity. So farmers, policymakers, and consumers must work together to implement these sustainable solutions. And this can ensure that we protect the public health while also not compromising our food security. And by taking these steps, I think that we can address this global challenge responsibly. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to discussing this topic further at the panel discussions. Bye.